There we go. So it's on recording, yes. So yeah, nice to see you all and nice to hang out for a little bit. My name is Douglas, and I've been in the field for a long time, 30 over years, originally from New York, ended up in Singapore. Last 10 years in the Singapore Public Service, leading OD for the entire public service, which is very exciting. And in practicing and also teaching OD, two of the concepts that I'm sure you all close to your heart as well, but use of self and levels of the system. And a couple months ago, I had to stumble on this idea to put the two of them together. And I did two of these kind of similar to this sessions with OD communities, one in the public service, one in the larger community. And people seem to like it and find it useful. And so I put in a thing for this, and here we are. And I hope you find it helpful. It's been done. The other ones were done in 2 hours. This is 50 minutes. So obviously that math doesn't work. So I'm thinking that we just do what we do. I'm going to make all the PowerPoint slides available if you want to use it. If you need to drop off for lunch or something else, or as somebody said, top up your water levels, whatever you need to do. Obviously, please do that. Okay, so we'll jump in and we'll see how it goes. We'll have a couple of little paired breakouts. So trust that you'll end up with the perfect people to connect with along the way as we build a community. So let me share a couple of slides just to get us started. So that's some information on me, especially I guess email, but LinkedIn and all that as well. So you may have heard this quote: "The success of an intervention depends on the interior condition of the intervener," by Bill O'Brien. And I think that's kind of the nature of what we're here to explore for this 50 minutes or an hour or however long you can stay, is how do we continue to work on ourselves so that when we intervene, we can be as effective as possible. That's what we do, right? And how we're going to do this in this session is we're going to look at 3 levels. Use of self can go very deep. In this session, I would call it a practical use of self. So how do we cultivate our conscious use of self at levels of the system? So we're going to do like use of self, like how we influence some of our internal workings, how we interact with other people, which is second person. So this is when we're actually interacting with people, and then some tools or ideas for working in larger systems. So that's kind of the structure that we're going to follow. I'm going to share 5 ideas in each of the 3 levels, have a quick breakout, a quick poll, and rotate through. So that's our plan. Our aspirations here: strengthen our self-awareness and some of our practices, expand our capacity to serve people and organizations, communities, learn from each other, and find ways to amplify ideas. I hope you find this useful enough to take it, modify it, share it if you think it's useful in any of the work that you do. Dave Jamieson, for those of you, just a reminder, use of self. Prof. Jamieson is one of the people that did a lot of use of self research about 2 years ago with Mien Chung Judge. If you haven't seen that, it's a really good report done all around the world. It's really that conscious use of our being, right, to achieve outcomes in service of other people in the situation. And one other way to do this, and we'll do a little chat thing, is if you're familiar with the educator Parker Palmer, he has one way to think about this, which is the courage. He calls it the courage to teach. He has 3 questions in there, and we're going to do this for ourselves. What to do is pretty easy to answer. Why do you do what you do? A little bit deeper. And then, of course, the one that goes a little deeper than that is, who are you? Who are each of us that consults? So that's a quick context to a question. I'm going to turn off the screen in a second. But if each of you could, if you're so moved, it would be great if you could just put in a few words or a phrase that describes that deeper question, who are you that consults? And then we'll go into exploring how do we expand who we are and how we show up. So who are you that consults? I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. And if we can put that into a chat, we'll just do this for a minute if you can. I know it's not an easy question to answer in 1 minute. Yeah. See. Yeah, how would you describe yourself? Like if a client meets with you, there we go, a thinker, a scientist, a learner, an architect, a facilitator, a being who provides unconditional positive regard. I'm just throwing these out. Obviously no simple way of doing it. Observer and intervener, learner, teacher, a medium, that's nice, observer. Curious catalyst. Wow, we should capture this chat, yeah? Insight provoker. Now, these are lovely metaphors. A channel, pillar, that's good. Feeler. Isn't this lovely to be in this community where we use such lovely metaphors and ways of thinking about what we do? Inquisitive, observer, curious, playful. Nice. A container. We are containers. Build and hold containers and hold space. Yes, carer, listener, weaver, deep questioner. Nice. Okay, so that just kind of gets us started. Partner for what needs to be done, courage provider. I am who I was made. Wow, we'll have to think about that, Vivian. A listener, clarify, interest, caring. So that just to get us started into thinking about who we are, the use of self. And now we're going to go into seeing how we can, get little tips or reminders. I think for you all, it would be more about reminders for how we can enhance the way we show up with other people. And here we go. So this is, speaking of metaphor, anybody? Sorry, somebody have a question? No? Okay, so speaking of metaphor, if you can think about this as a buffet, there's going to be 15 ideas offered, and you may even get more from somebody you talk to in a breakout room. So choose the ideas that you find most nutritious and delicious for what you do and who you serve and what you find helpful for yourself. So enjoy the buffet. So we're going to start. So here's, again, I'll just give the structure of this. I can't tell if anyone just joined, but I'm going to share 5 ideas under first person, like this use of self. And then we'll do a quick pair, 5-minute pair breakout room. Then we'll do a quick Zoom poll on which of the 5 ideas or all the 5 ideas or how many you found useful and for yourself that triggered some thoughts. And then they'll go to the second round, the same thing. So we're going to repeat that we're going to rinse and repeat 3 times. 5 ideas, breakout room, a poll, and then we go through that. And I think that ought to definitely fill up our time. So if you're ready, I'm going to share with you the 5 ideas under use of self. I think most of these you would be familiar with already. So I think they're reminders. So the first one is, I think obviously most of us have to-do lists, either in our minds or on paper, or when we go into a meeting, what are we going to do? And there's this idea to also have a to-be list. And when we go into a meeting, can we be prepared for not only what we're going to do, but how do we need to be in order for a meeting, for example, to be effective or a day to be effective? So sometimes we might need to be a bit more assertive. Sometimes we want to remind ourselves to be curious. And if I could tell a quick story that really woke this up for me, years ago, I went to a client and they wanted stuff about teams, how to do teaming for their organization. I shared a lot of stuff, a lot of tools and ideas. We had a great conversation. I thought went very well. A couple of years later, I became very good friends with the senior person, the senior director of that meeting. And she was kind enough to tell me that she was very unimpressed when we first met. So I asked her why. And she said that she was looking for a professional consultant with ideas. And she said that I had good ideas and I was very helpful, but I was too friendly for her liking. I mean, it was nice of her to tell me that, right? Because I tend to be quite friendly. And she just found like, Doug, no offense, but I wasn't looking for a friend, and you made it sound like you wanted to be friends with all of us. And it reminded me that depending on who I'm with, and if I'm meeting a group for the first time, maybe chill. So I've chilled out a bit on that. I'm giving you my own personal example, but you can all think if we show up in the same way all the time to every meeting we go to, I think there's bound to be some times when it's not going to be as effective as others. So how to be intentional about how we show up, our being, to be list. That's number one. Number two, I don't need to talk much about this one. I think you all know. What is it? A reminder to take a little time for daily reflection. And it could be a bit of meditation, a bit of reflection. A journaling question I learned from my first teacher many years ago was, what did I do well? After every event, he did this every night for 50 years. What did I do well today? What did I learn today? What can I do differently next time or tomorrow? So those are just ideas of how to do that. Again, we just close our eyes for 5 or 10 minutes, but some sort of daily reflection. Okay, number three, there's a saying that we cannot take our clients anywhere where we have not been ourselves. So I'm not sure what you have seen, but I've seen a number of facilitators, consultants, that if they're not comfortable with conflict, then when it happens in the room and people start disagreeing, they will shut it down. They will find ways to smooth it over and move on. And I think it's just a reminder for us to really be comfortable with conflict, so that when it shows up in the room, and it could be just disagreement, we can be objective and we don't project our own stuff about conflict into the space. So we can be objective, and sometimes we let it go, sometimes we talk to the group. So just a reminder to be really comfortable with conflict, and sometimes just let people yell at each other for a while. Maybe that's the best thing that the people need at the time. Number four, I don't remember even where I got this metaphor from, and I hope you find it useful as I have, which is, I think as human beings, we have judgments about people, right? We have opinions, we meet a group, we meet a person, he or she is arrogant, this group is not open. So we it's just natural to have opinions. And this is just a reminder that our opinions are like H2O, and they can be very hard on the left, like ice, or they can be very, very vaporous, like on the right. So we always have an opinion about our judgment. So, wow, isn't it interesting how this person seems like they seem to know everything, or they seem distracted. So it's really loosening up all our judgments. And that's why in OD, we get a lot of data, right? So we get a lot of data and diagnosis to make sure that at least our judgments and thoughts, and see if they have, if they're real or not, and also helps make sure get our judgment out of there and do our diagnosis. I hope this pace is okay. I'm trying to keep it moving so that we can get to the breakouts and see if we can get through all the cycles. Maybe I'll ask you in a minute after this fifth one. The last one is in the moment. A lot of the work that we do as coaches, as consultants, facilitators, there is quite a bit of work that comes in the moment. And in the moment, we need to decide, right? Do we share something or not? Do we provoke? Do we ask that deep question? Or do we share how we're feeling and see if that resonates into the group? And that's a muscle that is something we can do every day, right? Many times a day, we can ask ourselves the question, what's my gut feeling about what to eat for lunch, or about what to do, or what's the best thing to do now, and how am I feeling? And really develop, maybe you have all developed, I've had to work really hard to develop my muscles for intuition and feeling. Maybe that's why I put this one in there. So that the muscle is strong enough so that when we're in an important situation with a client, we're more likely to be able to trust our intuition, or maybe trust our intuition, whether we should say how we're feeling, I'm not sure about you all, but I feel a little bit frustrated that this is not going the way I hoped, or I'm sad about what's happening. So those are the first 5. And if you could take a quick picture of those 5, because I'll ask questions in a minute, but I'll see if you have, but if you can take a quick picture, because you're going to go into a breakout room with 2 people. And let me stop there. So, okay, it's okay. Whoever, I couldn't see do that. So, okay, everyone, so far, all right. Is that pace? Can anybody tell me, like, slow down or, all right? Because we want to go through, ideally, we go through all 3 rounds. And like I said, if you need to go, it's okay. But we're going to go to breakouts for a pair for 5 minutes. So I'm going to set it for 4 minutes, and then the room will close for 1 minute. So you have 5 minutes with your partner that you're in the room with. Again, hopefully the perfect person. Talk about which one stood out for you, what questions you have for each other, that kind of thing, and make good use of the time and the connection that you have. It is indeed. I will take the blame. Why not? And I know 5 minutes is really not enough, and I just feel I just did my best to try to at least get some connections, because you don't want to hear me ramble for 50 minutes, right? So I trust you all made some kind of connection. So let's do a very quick poll. Can you share? This is you can share. You can click on as many as you want, but of those practices, which one stood out for you, just so we get a sense of the group of which ones had some impact. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as many as you would like to click on. We're all in different spaces. And it looks like making a to-be list is going to be the winner. And there we go. And yep, 2/3 of you said make a to-be list. And then we also had some H2O and all that. So what I will do is I will take these polls and I will put them into the slides. So when I load up, I think I can load up the slides right in the app, and then you can access it, and I'll keep it in PowerPoint. I don't, for those of you, whatever work that you do, but I found this kind of a nice little thing to add into people, and it's also an easy one to do virtually, like if as a follow-up for a class or something. So see what you think. Okay, we're going to go to level 2, and I don't know if you can tell, but oh yeah, that's true. Good job, Peter, holding the container for all the others. So in my mind, I'm thinking like to go fast on this, but not hurry. So I'm trying to do that thing. You know, I think you all know that thing. So here we go. I'm going to go to level, the second person, which is working with others. The first one, just set a quick context on this. I think you would all be familiar with creative tension, Robert Fritz, Peter Senge. And if you know Robert Fritz's book on this, The Path of Least Resistance, basically the path of least resistance is to get rid of the tension, the emotional tension, right? And solve the problem. And creative tension says, let's get up and make sure we're looking at our aspirations, the possibilities, and new ideas. And the question then is, what do we do to help a group, or ourselves for that matter, make sure we're doing creative tension and not just reacting to the situation. So number 6, the first one under this person is just keep reminding ourselves to ask those generative questions. What do we want to achieve? You know, for a meeting, for a project, what's our picture of success? I think a lot of people use that for projects. Ask people, what are your aspirations? What would you like to get out of this? So those are just quick reminders to make sure we're asking those generative questions in the groups that we're with. Number 7, power. And I added 2 angles to this. Something I learned from Peter Block many years ago, which has served me well, he said, always treat senior leaders as your neighbors, so that it really reduces the power distance and so be neighborly, be friendly, and I can tell you it's worked for me, and I think it's been a great reminder. You might have your own little heuristics about how to do that, but it's really like no matter how powerful they are, it's like just treat them as a neighbor, respectful, friendly, as we work with them. And then the second one, with power in a room, often the lower level people or the quieter people, particularly lower level, don't speak. And how do we make sure we give them the opportunity to speak? And maybe this is more in this part of the world, but I find myself having to work pretty hard. And often even I'll ask a junior staff a question, and sometimes the senior person will answer the question for the junior person. So it's like, how do we be really conscious to get that energy out into their ideas out into the space? So a lot of times I'll say, we've been meeting for 30 minutes and you've been observing all this. What's your perspective on, when you hear us talk, how does it sound to you? So make it easy to get people into the conversation. So 2 angles on power: treating senior leaders as neighbors and doing go-arounds, whatever that means, to get the voices of everyone into the room and give them permission, I guess, is this thing. I've also seen, by the way, and this is not even a Singapore thing, but I've even seen parents answer questions that are asked for their children. So it's not even just organizations. Yeah. Okay, number 8, I think we should help elephants. The poor elephants of the world. They have to go to psychologists, right, and get counseling because they're in the middle of the room and nobody sees them or talks about them, and they have to get some help. And of course, we can call this process consulting, Ed Shine. And I'm not sure about you or the people you work with, but a lot of times people think that naming the elephant is like a career-threatening move and takes a lot of courage. I think that if we're really good at this, or at least okay at it, when we name what's happening, actually the group will thank us, right? When we say, I'm noticing we seem to be going off track a lot, the group will be like, wow, great. Thanks, somebody said it. They're either thinking it or when they hear it, they go, yes, that's true, or, this issue has come up for the 3rd meeting in a row and we just move on and we skip over it. Anybody want to talk about what's happening? So I think when we name the elephant, if we get really good at naming the elephant, the groups will really appreciate it. And sometimes does it take a bit of courage? Perhaps, but especially if you have the role of a process consultant or a facilitator, I think it's okay. Number 9, I think you would have all seen this diagram about advocacy and inquiry with listening. And I think some of the research says that high-performing teams have a nice balance of advocacy, sharing ideas, and listening with inquiry. And I don't know who came up with this addition, but it occurred to me that it's not just about sharing ideas and asking questions. It's about the how. So when we share ideas, it can be very, this is the way it is. And when we ask a question, it can be like, why do you think we should do that? So that can be like an inquisition, at the bottom. So how do we share ideas and ask questions in a way that comes from a space of curiosity and doesn't shut down conversations, but generates more conversation? And I often share this a little even more with leadership teams that I work with, to remind them about not only to ask questions, because most of them don't even ask questions at all, but to remind them to ask questions, and then remind them that when you do ask questions or even share, make it a sense of curiosity in there. So that's point number 9, choose to be curious. Number 10 is about meetings. I'm sorry, I'm going to bombard you with lots of ideas, and many of you should already know, but I don't know where to stop because this is a buffet. So here's just some, meetings get a bad rap. I suppose some of it is deserved, right? But here are just some of the techniques that I use or bring into groups that I think have been very helpful. Rotate the chairperson of the meeting. That's virtual or in person. Change the seating location if it's in person. Cameras on. I think we know that one. Have a process consultant. Sometimes I work with leadership teams. I have them pick out of a hat for different roles, and one person plays the process consultant, for example, if we're not doing it. Check-ins. I find the most effective check-in with teams, leadership teams, is what will you do to make this meeting most effective? That way they're sharing what they will do. It makes them more aware. I will not talk as much. I will ask more questions. I will invite more people to share. And that way the meeting is already off to a really good start and it doesn't take a lot of time. And of course, some sort of checkout to talk about the quality of the meeting. Next one, idea meritocracy. If you've read Ray Dalio's book, Principles, great book. And one of the ideas he introduces is idea meritocracy. So detach the idea from the person and we can evaluate ideas just on its own merit, not on who introduced the idea. So you might need to use some technology for that. In many countries in the world, I know here, we really pride ourselves on meritocracy. So it's a nice naming of that idea meritocracy. Empty chair technique. If you have a customer, a citizen that you want to make sure their presence is felt, use an empty chair technique. The last one that I use quite a bit is a traffic light system. So if we have an idea and we want to test the group, and again, it doesn't have to take a lot of time. Everyone in the room, we're just going to go around and hear from everyone. If you think it's a great idea, green. If you think it's a bad idea, red. If you think it's okay, you say yellow. Then quick, takes 1 minute to go around the room and then ask the people who said yellow, is there anything we can do to make the idea more green from your perspective? So you get two big benefits, right? Often you tune up an idea and you get more ownership because everyone knows they had an input into the decision or into the idea. So those are a quick run through of meetings. Again, you can take a picture or again, send you the slides anyway, because we're going to move on to the breakout room. So those are the 5 ideas for the second person. So you're going to go in with a dialogue partner. Again, same thing, what practices struck you, what questions you have. So asking questions, you can take a picture of this, ask questions, address the power dynamics, help the elephants, choose to be curious, and hold meetings that matter. So it's a big buffet in there. Okay, so here we go. Recreate, so be with new people. Again, trusting it's the perfect people. And do we have the right number? Sorry, let me just make sure we have the right number of rooms. Okay, I think some of you will be in groups of 3, but all yours. And I don't suppose 5 minutes is enough to have much of a conversation. A little of something is better than a lot of nothing, I hope. And just that you got with the right people and all that. So, all right, so let's do a poll for this one. Let's see for round 2. So there's your 5 ideas. Again, pick any or all that stood out for you in some way. Oh, the elephants are getting some love here, man. That's really nice to see. And one more vote. Give you a few more seconds.
Douglas, can I ask?
Yeah.
Would you mind give me some more example on what are some of the creative tension you think you have experienced so far?
I mean, in general?
Yes.
Oh, well, I mean, we could do an hour and a half just on creative tension. No, because it exists at every level of the system, right? We all have our creative tensions for what we're trying to create. Every team has creative tension. So, and the whole idea, yeah, I wish I could go into this, but we really don't have the time. Or maybe we have a separate chat on it. But I think it's a really important concept for us to know in the work that we do and help people, the rubber band metaphor of getting clear on what the current reality, getting clear on the desired reality, and then how do we move ahead. So Robert Fritz and Peter Senge made that term familiar, but even Richard Beckhart's first model was basically the same thing. So is that okay for now? All right.
Yeah, absolutely. I will. Okay. Maybe we can find out the time.
Okay, did I show the poll or did I lose the poll? Okay, here we go. And then we'll, so elephants, yeah, it's really nice to see the elephants get some love and a little bit of attention. I think that was the empathy in the room that did that. I'm convinced of that. All right. So I just want to, I'm looking at the clock. I know it's up against lunch and all that, or wherever you are. If you need to leave, I'll try to do the same thing, run through the last 5. If you need to go, please just go. It's okay. Go have lunch or meet up with whoever you're meeting up with. And if you can stay and do the breakout rooms, great. But please do whatever you need to do for yourself. And we'll get the slides out to you. Okay, here we go, the last 5. This is working with a larger system. So now we're not talking about connecting with people now. We're talking about how do we think about, for ourselves, how do we enhance and sharpen the way we think of large systems? So the first one comes from a very good friend, Jeff Bellman. Some of you would know Jeff. And I have all his books, but my favorite is The Beauty of the Beast. And the metaphor is that most people in organizations think they're the beauty and the organization is the beast. So how do we learn, like in the movie, to appreciate the beauty of the beast? And he has a lovely 2x2, or you can Google and read a little bit more about it, or maybe some of you have the book. This 2x2 matrix, which you can go quite deep into thinking about how does it help us when we dislike the beast or love the beast, and how does it harm us when we dislike or love the beast? We can do a session just on that, but it's a really powerful reflection, and I often ask senior leaders to do this reflection. So food for thought, number 11. So it's really make peace with the beast, I guess is the number 11. And the OD principle, accept and honor the client system for who and where they are and walk them to where they want to be. Okay, number 12, some of you be familiar with the work of Barry Oshry, another good friend. And the principle here is blame less and empathize more. Back to H2O. If you know this work, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not, just to say really quickly that people often take things personally, or they label people from other worlds. So bottoms love to blame tops. That's where Dilbert came from. Tops will sometimes blame the middles or the bottoms. Middles feel squeezed by everyone. And there's all this dynamics going on, and citizens and customers are blaming the system. And there's a lot of dysfunctionality in blaming, right? We're telling stories about those people. And so it's really like, how do we soften up those stories and empathize more that with people in different parts of the system, they have their own challenges. And the OD principle from Barry himself, what each of us can do in our role as tops, middles, bottoms, and customers is to build the health of the system and to help it survive and develop. If you're not familiar with this work, you can easily Google Power and Systems, Barry Oshry, whatever, and you can get lots of really good materials on that. Or email me, and I can send you some even really good stuff. A good friend that wrote some really cool articles about topness, middleness, and bottomness. They're short and sweet and quite informative. So that's number 12. Number 13 is the idea about building partnerships. And a lot of people think like collaboration, for example, needs to be a big orchestration of energy, and sometimes it does, but there's many C's. David Coleman wrote a piece on this. Sometimes it's as simple as a conversation, a tea or a breakfast to talk about what's happening, communicating with people, coordinating efforts between groups, different forms of cooperation. And then a more collaboration, co-creation, maybe co-create to collaborate. And Barry Oshry, just to refer back to that, to connect people. Sometimes we don't need to do any of that. He calls it, sometimes we get stuck in the sore pipe if we're stuck in between people. And sometimes the best thing we can do is just make connections between groups of people that can help each other, and then we let it go. So this is just 7 C's to think about to build community, to build partnerships. That's 13. So if we want to achieve collective results, requires partnership across the system. Number 14, if some of you are familiar with polarities, I do a lot of work in the area of polarities. And this is something, go to polarity partnerships if you're not familiar and look some of the things up. It's great. But when we're working with large systems, we want to keep an eye and an ear out for the common. These are some of the ones I think are quite common in the work that we do. Just to put health and economy is obviously quite pressing in this time. Stability and change. If for people that push for change, often that actually gets in the way of change because there's another part of the organization that's asking for stability. They get labeled as resistors and the whole thing turns upside down. So how do we look at what is changing and what is staying the same? And you can go through all those data sharing and data privacy. Top down and bottom up. I'm not sure about you. I get asked that question a lot. Should we do this top down or bottom up? And I say, why don't we do both? Why don't we get everybody in the system and do it together, right? They'll get the whole system in a room from Marv Weisboard. And you can see all that. Anyway, if you're not sure, if you're not familiar as much with polarities, there's a lot of good stuff out there. And I think being able to see a polarity and know what to do with it is really helpful, especially in these days with lots of complexity. So the OD principle from Barry, again, Barry Johnson, quote the guy who created the kind of current model. If you want to guarantee a change effort will not be sustainable, tie it to one pole of a polarity. If you want a platform to build a change effort, build it on a polarity because it's indestructible. So very powerful stuff. Lots of good stuff on the internet out there on this. The last one at the larger system is keep in mind the O and OD. So we can talk about leadership, but what about collective leadership, right? Team development, what about teaming? So Amy Edmondson wrote a book about teaming, right? So how do we create a culture where people know how to team? So anytime they're on a team, people know what is it like to be a high performing or to build a team that gets results and has a good experience. I'm doing some work in that. Instead of just saying, how do we have better meetings? How do we create a culture of meetings that work? And the last one, change management. I think things are moving too fast, obviously, for us to be a point A to point B kind of facilitator or consultant. We do need to do that, but the bigger picture, the O, because it's not just about change, managing a change, it's about change as an organization competency, right? To be agile, to adaptable, and also change portfolio management, which is look with the organization. I do some of this work where we plot all the changes that are happening and look at resources and which ones are priorities and which ones maybe can be delayed if people have serious change fatigue. So the quote from Ed Schein, right, is OD is about building and maintaining the health of the organization as a total system. So as much as we can, we're thinking, are there any ways to turn those terms on the left to also make it more systemic, more O, put more O in OD. All right, so those are the 5 to think about. How do we as individuals ourselves think about the larger system, make peace with the beast, empathize more with people for wherever part of the system they're in, do more of those C's, see and name polarities, and remember the O in OD. All right, so the last breakout group see who's still around, 5 minutes, and we'll just come back and do a poll and wrap it up. Again, we are at the hour, so if you need to go, feel free to do that, and we'll see what we have after this. So new partners, have a great time. See you in 5 minutes. That's a good thing to you. So our winner is polarities. Yeah, I think just such a helpful thing to do, right, in the complexities. I'm sure some of you are quite familiar, and if not, yeah, check it out. PolarityPartnerships.com is the best place to start Barry Johnson's work. Yeah, and obviously some of you would be familiar with that. So I think we'll call it a day. Does that work for everyone? I'll stay if anyone wants to hang out, but I think it's good to maybe you take a break, have some lunch or dinner, depending on your time zone and everything like that. So nice to meet you all. I hope it's helpful. I hope you can spread this, and if you find it useful. Okay. So see you in some of the other sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bye.